Welcome home. It's always good to see you. Thanks for coming back. This is Chapter 6 in the ongoing series, Know Your Enemy, Reframing PTSD. This is part 1. Excuse me, I'll be doing them in 2 parts, trying to shorten these up. This is the ways of the Spirit, part of our tremendous guidance system. You actually think that a loving God, for do as our Father in heaven, would let us come to earth without a roadmap of life, if you would, and a guidance system, virtually a compass. Well, he has. That's what this whole next 2 videos are going to be about. This is still small boys. But let me give another explanation here, trying to differentiate our self-talk, actually our conscious mind, our inner dialogue that's always kind of rolling around in our head. It's estimated almost 70% of it for a lot of us can just be negative. And they go to our conscience, which is separate, sometimes referred to as the light of Christ. Don't you marvel that all humans come to earth with a conscience? You can deaden it. You cannot pay attention to it, but we all know the difference between right and wrong. There's a difference in the ring of that voice between your conscience and your self-talk. And for many years of experience, if my self-talk is arguing with my conscience, generally I'm wrong. Then they go to intuitive senses. There's so much there. I'll be picking that up later in another talk. But just briefly, our soul or our spirit knows and sees many, many things. Most of the time we just ignore it, or our self-talk drowns it out. But our intuitive senses is a tremendous gift to us. We've deadened it. Our society today, we don't listen much anymore. Listen to our internal dialogue of our intuitive senses. We're so busy with TV, radios, video games, our phones, the list is endless. When was the last time you just sat and listened to yourself and pondered or thought deeply on things? Next time you're driving, try driving without listening to that radio. See how long you last with it shut off. There's many cultures that lived by their intuitive senses. It's a stunning field. I'll pick it up later. Where I'm trying to target this whole section is the still small voice. I wrestled with this at the beginning. Actually wanted to present this in the first one. And please remember, all goodness, all good things comes from God. That latent knowledge, keep what you have, but please consider these things that will be being presented. That still small voice is the Spirit of God beckoning to us. It's an external source. Let me quickly read this. It's from the King James Version of the Bible in the Old Testament, from an account about Elijah, a prophet, fleeing for his life. Many of the other prophets had already been killed. It's an amazing account. I'm just giving you a part of it. He's hiding in a cave. He's near Horeb. Let me read it to you. Probably already read it. And behold, the Lord passed by, and great and strong wind rent the mountains, and brake in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. From the beginning of time, man knew of these things from a myriad of reasons. Many have slipped away or forgotten these things, or not even been shown. May I share an example of these concepts? not to be shared lightly or to brag of, but an example of a tremendous lesson I learned in the 90s in the Bering Sea in Alaska. Pretty much life was like this. It's like falling out of an elevator sometimes. We'd be free falling so far. These pictures were taken from the mate of the ship that we were transferring to, virtually a mothership. It's referred to as a joint venture, we being the catcher boat. Swell sometimes, so deep that the radar would actually lose its imagery. This is the fishing vessel Vaerdal. She's 128 foot. At the time was owned by Jubilee Fisheries, whose owners at the time were Don Iverson, Russ Sleipness, and Phil Vaerdal. I'll forever be grateful for their trust in me. I was there approximately 9 years. Half the year was a crew and I. The other half of the year the boat was run by a talented man named Bill Hayes. Let me try to expound a little bit kind of what's going on in this picture. So this hawser is referred to as a transfer line. We've got about 120,000 pounds of fish, 60 tons we're towing behind us. So we're connecting our cod end to that cable which will transfer the fish over to the boat. There's no room for error here whatsoever. All of our rigging and gear were figured with a shock load of 10 times the value. So our hammer locks and our shackles, there's no weak link in them. It's designed to stay intact under tremendous and serious loads. It's the same with the crew. There was no flaw in them. I worked with some incredible men, extremely brave. Once again, there is no room for error. None. With that being said, we having to be one continual team all the time. Let me go to the story that I'm trying to get to. So we're done doing the joint ventures. We brought on more men. We had approximately 12 men on the boat. We're traveling, so we're way north of Dutch Harbor going to the Pribilof Islands. The rest of the crew is asleep. They're exhausted. Tremendous days amount that they work and hours. I've never heard of insomnia on a fishing vessel, never. So when the engineer's asleep, he's got to sleep sometime. Whoever's on watch, and that was me in this particular instance, I'm on watch. Engineer's asleep. Even though we've got cameras that wigwag and show the engine room continually, you have a monitor right off to your side, I still had to physically go down and check the engine room and then enter into a log that we've done such. So I'm on autopilot, and the weather isn't good. So in a hurry, I dash down to the engine room. There's 2 flights of stairs to get down there. As I get down there, I kind of meander around the engine room, checking it's fine. So I get up past the 2nd flight of stairs going towards the wheelhouse. That still small voice beckoned to me, saying, "You need to get back down to that engine room." As I pointed out, my self-talk was kind of wrestling with it, telling me, "I just left there. I had all kinds of excuses. It'll be fine. There's nobody on watch. I need to get back up to the wheelhouse." Beckoning to me, go back and check the engine room. So when we're going back down the stairs, kind of muttering to myself, as I opened that engine room door, heavy steel door, I'll never forget it as long as I live. My glasses instantly fogged up with fuel. I couldn't even see out of them. And I thought to myself, what is this? I just left here. So I go down the stairs, and the fuel line, it's a 12-cylinder engine. Fuel line bigger around than your fingers had busted, was spraying fuel all over the engine room. It's atomized in the air. It was like a fog. The turbos, which are about this big around, they're running at 1,100 to 1,200 degrees. They're soaked with fuel. They're starting to smoke come off. They're just ready to go into ignition. If that isn't enough, the fans above are huge. Pouring air in there, that 12-cylinder engine can have enough air to run. It had been caught just in time. So I was able to shut the main engine down, shut the fans off. a fuel line was switched in a place, and we had to wait and clean up after all that fuel was sprayed all over the place. Coincidence? No. Still small voice? Yes. Part of our protective guidance system. This is the old Aleutian mistress, put together by a man named Terry Sparks. She burned to the waterline from an existing fire. It was in Anacortes from that same situation. That's what they attributed to. The Jubilee Fisheries bought the boat and switched the name to Vaerdal from Aleutian mistress. All of these voices sensed, and when they work together, is glorious. It's fantastic. When they're all wrestling with each other and not in sync, it can be chaotic. My goal is to present them to you for internal peace, strength, and joy. All of these, every one of them, the more you listen, the louder that they get. Plus, when used, you'll be able to differentiate between them. There are distinctive differences between them. As example, you'll feel pure knowledge. It's from an external source versus what's in our own mind. It is the ultimate guidance system. It's an incredible gift to man. Many times my life has been spared paying attention to that. I use it as a baseline to judge all things by. Use it to judge me in these talks by. Still small voice of that Spirit of God is used for teaching. Tremendous comfort that it offers. Uplifting. I live by myself, but I'm never alone. I don't even know what alone means. A loving friend is a constant companion. As long as I live the ways that allows that to be with me, it is priceless to me. And yet, it's free. How do we learn the difference? Words can only expound so much. As it's written, line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little. Trial and error is how we learn. You ever sit by a fire and stare into its amazing, mesmerizing features? This is from the wood stove that I use. I opened the door and took this picture. What a tremendous source of comfort and heat to me. Late at night before I go to bed, I sit there and stare into the fire with the lights off. There's light dancing all over the ceiling. I don't even want to leave to go to bed. Sometimes I come back and stare for a while more. It's a wonderful comparative. That's why I put this in there. Of the ways of the Spirit. Sometimes referred to as being baptized with fire and the Holy Ghost. How did I learn in these ways? It's very important to me to pass on to you. That's in part 2. May you be inspired to view it. I'll see you there.